All right, welcome everybody to episode 3 of Infernal Intercourse with me and Pastor Brian Antonio. And this time we're going to talk a little about the nature of angels. I had a little tongue-tied there. But being a Protestant, I don't know squat about angels. But Brian is an ex-Catholic, so he can tell us more.
Yeah, and I think that's where this series takes the most obvious liberties, I think, from the traditional mythology. It is interesting because in some of the Hebrew scriptures, I guess what we would call the Old Testament, the angels do kind of seem like fleshly things that, even have intercourse with humans and have children, offspring. But generally, traditionally, by the Christian scriptures, the New Testament, angels are beings of light. So this whole idea of an angel having flesh, and I think it's so interesting in this show that Lucifer is so involved in all the fleshly things. Is his flesh newly acquired because he left hell and he's like an adolescent playing with it, or is it he's always kind of been fleshly? Archangels go back and forth between God and humans, so do they specially have flesh?
Well, I think in the show, because his mother, this was one of those lines that kind of bugs me. His mother does say that he was always basically very sexual. But before the fall, there's only his siblings and his parents. So who was he being sexual with? They never really touched that one.
Right. Well, that actually could be a really fun series of all the angels being, very fleshly together. That would be quite interesting. But I do think the whole nature of angels traditionally is simply energy or messages and light between God and creation. And so the nature of angels here, I think we have to pay really close attention to. This canon of this show has created specific rules for angels that are maybe its own. And again, I like to keep going back to the fact that, maybe Lucifer is unique because he's the most human. Maybe he was the one that was obsessed with humanity, kind of the way God is obsessed with humanity. And so maybe that's why he inherits the role of hell. And maybe he's feeling sorry for himself about it, but maybe that's what he really wanted, right? Just like we put ourselves in hell by our own obsessions, maybe he put himself in hell by his own obsession.
Well, yeah, he says sometimes the only thing he ever wanted was be his own man, which I guess if you're the only angel in hell, you can kind of do what you want.
Well, and that's just a traditional role of the accuser against daddy, right? Like that whole daddy-son issue right there. I want to be my own man. My daddy's God, but I want to somehow be separate from God or better than God or different from God. Or God loves humans, I'm going to love them more. Humans love God, I'm going to make them love me more. Or if they won't love me, then I'll make them suffer more or something like that.
Well, we've had a couple of times where other characters have told us how different he is from the other angels. I think of season 2 when Amenadiel says, I was always surprised by your capacity for goodness. And then at the end of season 3, when the angel of death tells him, when the older ones were bullying me, I always fled to you because you protected me. So it kind of seems like they're painting Satan, right, as the protector character, someone who could always choose to be good and had this compassion or mercy that the others didn't have. And this is maybe what gets him in trouble, which is sort of an interesting idea, I guess.
And that's traditional mythology that Satan was the most gifted, right, and the closest, and God's number 2, right, God's top angel. And I think that's interesting because that even reflects in Christian mythology of Judas, right? Judas was closest to Jesus. Jesus is most trusted, who betrays him. Then you get Peter, James, John, and they're like, yeah, they're okay. Well, same thing with, Michael the Archangel. I mean, kind of like the big dumb archangel, but he protects us, right? But he's not Satan. He's not that gifted. It's kind of interesting.
Okay, so yeah, in this show, angels are not depicted as particularly nice. Obviously,
that's for sure.
If the angel of death is saying, you always protected me when the older kids beat me up, I mean, that kind of sounds like heaven is sort of Lord of the Flies. That's kind of a not a place you really want to be.
And that goes along with that earlier mythology, how humans, pre-science, pre-psychology, they encountered believing God as malevolent and kind of something to be feared. But certainly all these angels, the idea of the angels in the early Hebrew scriptures there of kind of being rapists, kind of like we see Greek gods, being rapists and molesters and things like that. So that is an interesting way to look at the angels, as opposed to a later Platonian idea of creatures of light. Instead, we invest them with more human characteristics, which are predatory. Hurt people, and hurt angels, I guess. I don't.
Yeah, they're not people you want to meet.
No. It's like the police in Mexico, right? Like, may God bless and keep them far away from me, right? Like, so it's kind of.
Yeah, so the only one that seems to be kind of cool with people at first is Lucifer. And even, in the very first episode before he meets Chloe, the setup is him talking to that singer that he's helped in the past. And she's come back and she's afraid. She's like, I guess he's sent for her. And she's like, well, did I sell my soul to you? And he's like, no, well, why would I want your soul? What I'm going to ask of you is even harder. And then what he asks of her basically is for her to get cleaned up, right? To get off the drugs or whatever. And it's like, okay, so he could have asked her for anything in return, but what he asks her still is really to do something for herself, right? He's not even looking out for himself in this particular case.
Well, and we've talked about the nature of God, but I didn't really think to talk about this, but sometimes I feel like, is Lucifer really God, right, in this? And that kind of a thing makes me feel that way, right? Instead of, Lucifer is this judging bad boy, which is how we all project that on him. But is Lucifer in reality, God, who is challenging us and sometimes even reveals a little too much of God's self, which is wanting us to do better rather than kind of tempting us or holding a mirror up to us to show us where we're falling down.
Okay. Yeah, so he does say multiple occasions he gets tired of people saying the devil made me do it, and he's being blamed for everything. But he's like the only one that's around people. So I guess Amenadiel has been sent. We get hinted that he's been sent a few times to like tell somebody a certain something or to make sure that Chloe gets born. But then he always has, in the past, has gone right back to heaven and sees no value in knowing human beings. So when he originally poses as a therapist and he lies to Linda, and doesn't mind lying to Linda, right, until Linda, gets upset and then it's like, you lied to me and that's wrong. And then he starts this journey of losing his wings and losing his powers and figuring out that maybe people aren't all that bad and living among them, might be the way to go. And so now by season 4, it's like, I don't want to go back to heaven. I feel at home in Los Angeles, just like Lucifer does.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's interesting early because he seems to try and go the Lucifer route. He tries to go the sensual route at times, and it doesn't seem to be as fulfilling for him as it is for Lucifer. Eventually, he does kind of go that human route, but it doesn't seem to love humans still as much as Lucifer loves humans.
Yeah, and then none of the others apparently do, because when we see Uriel,
a traditional archangel,
right?
in the mythology.
Fire of God, is that his name?
Yeah, Uriel, God's light, God's fire. Yeah.
And he's telling Lucifer, you know what? I'm just going to kill Chloe and your mom, or whoever he's going to kill. Not his mother, but I'm just going to lay waste to everybody you care about. So clearly, he doesn't care about killing people. So he ends up dead. But not somebody you want around, and he seems to be more representative of angels in general. And so in the show, anyway, and so it's like, okay, how much of Lucifer's character then in this show is like, okay, all angels are kind of like narcissistic pricks, but this one,
like humans,
right? Yeah, but this one is starting to get a little more self-aware. And understanding that maybe you could think about other people once in a while. So
as long as they put themselves first, there's a capacity to develop some ethics right there. But their first instinct is just to indulge themselves and humans be damned. That's an interesting and is that a reflection of God too? You know.
Mm. Okay, well, thank you for joining me for episode 3 of Infernal Intercourse, and we'll see you again later. Bye, everybody.